Public meeting notice. This is a special city council meeting, City of Bel Air Beach, August 12th. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please do the honors?
Councilmember Robin Aki.
Present.
Councilmember Marv Beam.
Here.
Councilmember Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Shirley.
Here.
Councilmember Rita Swope.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
City Attorney Fred Riley.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Welcome. This is a special meeting. If you get your information on social media and you have come to discuss the town festival, if you have come to discuss the trunk or treat, if you have come to discuss the Christmas party, or if you have come to discuss the car show, you are in the wrong place. The three items that are going to be discussed tonight are the approval of the City of Bel Air Beach sponsorship policy, the approval of the Bel Air Beach sponsorship agreement, and a reprimand of the city manager for failure to timely carry out the City Council's Item 10 directive of July 1st, 2019 that required him to complete those items. This is a special council meeting. Nothing else is permitted at it. There is no general session. You will be permitted to speak on those items, and only those items. If you stray from it, I'm going to ask that you stop. There is a code of conduct. It is at that table. It is also here. It does not replace Robert's Rules of Order. It does not replace our town ordinances. It simply summarizes them, and basically when you come up here and you decide that you want to speak, you agree to abide by those rules. If you don't want to abide by them, then I'm going to ask you either to stop doing what you're doing, I'm going to ask you to sit back down, or I may ask you to leave. There's two sheriffs in the back. I understand there's more on the way. It is up to them what happens to you if you decide to go crazy here. So obviously, be cool. Okay, the other thing is we don't talk when people are talking up here. Okay, this isn't the movies and it's not a concert. So, with that said, if you come up here, please adhere to the rules. You have 3 minutes to speak on the topic. We're going to move into the first item, which is the approval of the City of Bel Air Beach sponsorship policy. The explanation of that is to review, edit, reject, or approve the City of Bel Air Beach's sponsorship policy prepared by the city manager and submitted to legal counsel on August 1st, 2019, with comments received on August 7th, 2019. There is an attachment that has been put out, and that attachment is the policy itself. At this point, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's open for discussion. I might suggest, if you wish to yield to me, I've got probably about 10 pages of comments on this, and what I would like to do is summarize them to you and explain why I don't believe we should move forward with this at this point in time. If we want to have more discussion, we certainly can, and obviously it's open to everyone on the City Council, then we could open it up to the audience. But if someone wanted Dave Gaddis, you have the floor because you made the motion. You're yielding? Yep. Thank you. Okay, so what we have in our packets is the City of Bel Air Beach sponsorship policy. And the effect of this policy, in my opinion, would be that let's just rewind the tape for a second here. We have a city festival that has been approved by the council. It was approved in the July 1st session. The Parks Board, primarily June Van Scoy, but other individuals have been working very, very hard to obtain sponsors. The idea being that this event would be self-funding. The way it looks right now, it would probably make a profit. That was before everything that started this week. So I don't know where it's going to go. Not one sponsor has been signed because we don't have a policy and we don't have a agreement. So we can't sign anyone up, yet they keep calling every single day saying what's happening. So basically this policy, as I read it, would preclude about 50 to 60%, maybe more, of the existing people from participating in this event. And it really doesn't benefit the city to have a policy that makes us pay more money, particularly when some of the things in this policy really are vague, not controllable, and possibly even unconstitutional. Now, I want to say something before I get too far into this. Our new attorney, some of you may have not met him yet, Fred Riley, is at the end of the table here. Fred reviewed this on very, very short notice, and absolutely none of what I'm saying is directed at Fred. He did an incredible job of going through this, so it has nothing to do with Fred. The fact of the matter is it's just a bad policy, and it just needs to be basically fixed. So let's take it from the top, starting with page 1. And I'm not going through all my comments, I'm just going to go through some of the major ones. Item 1, we talk about that the policy is not going to be applicable to third-party events. It doesn't talk about being applicable to philanthropic contributions, and the question is, why not? Doesn't say. The event itself, it says that it has to be the benefit of the greater Bel Air Beach community. That is true. This is designed to benefit Bel Air Beach. But of course, we've had very good newspaper coverage thanks to our reporter Wayne Ayers. He did a fabulous job by promoting this, and other people may come to this. We're not going to bar them. When in the beginning this started out as a picnic, we were to give free food. We're not doing free food anymore. So if people want to come, they can come. We're not going to stop them. Fred had put in family-friendly, this is on page 2, item J, puts in family-friendly, that we want this to be a family-friendly venue. And I don't think any of us disagree with that. We're certainly not trying to attract anything that's, not in keeping with our community standards. The problem is, what are our community standards? They're not codified any place. If I go on social media, I'd come away with one view of our community standards. If I drive down the streets, I might come away with another one. I think putting in family-friendly, suitable for families consisting of parents and minor children is good. I just don't know legally if it will hold, and we're going to ask Fred later on about that, whether that's something like that's going to hold or if it's just more discouraging. The city is reserving the right in its sole discretion to decline offers of sponsorship. My question is, who makes that decision? Item 3 on tonight's thing is a reprimand to our city manager, and we're going to talk about it, but for not getting things done, in my opinion. So who makes this decision? Does this come before council? Is this going to the city manager? It doesn't say in here. There's no format for how this stuff gets done. Talks about an item of Roman numeral 4, small 4, I think. The City of Bel Air Beach individuals, businesses, and organizations will be given priority when assigning specific sponsorships. Well, that's wonderful, but when you have a $2,500 major sponsor, okay, the $25 sponsor from Bel Air Beach shouldn't be getting priority. They will not give us the money if we're going to put them in the back and put the lower paying person up front. So I don't know why that's there. Item small Roman numeral V, 5. Sponsors may not sell goods or services at city events or programs. Well, why not? They do every place else that I go. They do it in Clearwater, they do it in St. Petersburg, they do it at every other festival that I go to. Let's understand one thing. These people are not giving us $2,000 because they love us. They're doing it because they want to reach out to their constituents, to their customers. They want to sell stuff. So if somebody gives us money and they want to sell something there, why not? As long as it's legal, we shouldn't have a problem with it. Page 5, item 2, Roman numeral 2, small 2, it says that prices and benefits per level and event or program will be consistent from event to event or program to program. I'll stop right there because I don't have to read any more of this. So if I were to interpret this correctly, then it'll be $2,000 to be a major sponsor or $1,000 to be a major sponsor of our festival, which is going to attract a lot of people. And it'll be $1,000 to be a sponsor of our trunk or treat, which is going to attract 25 kids. Does anybody else see the problem with that? Because I'm not going to pay you $1,000 to be the sponsor of the trunk or treat. So sponsorship levels cannot be the same from event to event. Each event has its own items, and if you want to know about that, go up the road to Clearwater. And to sponsor the Jazz Holiday is one thing, and to sponsor the blast, the Friday night blast on the street that they do in downtown is another. Okay, it's not the same sponsorship levels. So doing that is just a recipe to have no one participate. Perhaps the most egregious thing that's in this agreement is on page 6, C, Roman numerals 2. And it says that any entity, individual with business coming before the city council or any city boards or committees within 12 months of signing the sponsorship agreement may not participate. Well, let me tell you who we just eliminated. We just eliminated waste management. We just eliminated the police. We just eliminated the fire department. We just eliminated the Clearwater Gas Company. These are all major sponsors or major people who would be participating in this, okay? Because they all have business coming before our board. We also eliminated everybody here on this board, okay? As I stand here now, several of us have our own businesses. I don't advertise my legal practice, but I was just going to donate just because
Point of order.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but obviously you feel very strongly that this is not a good policy. I don't really think that we need a detailed line for line. If it's incorrect and the attorney agrees that it's incorrect, which the final word is going to be our attorney who looks this over, if he says it's no good, it needs to go back. I don't really see a need to waste everyone's time going through this entire policy to prove how bad it is.
That's not a valid point. I'm going to say it second time, okay? It's inappropriate for this is not a baseball game. You don't clap and cheer. This is the second warning. It won't be a third.
It would be...
That's not a proper point of order. It's not a proper point of order. I have the floor at this point to go through it. If everyone agrees that I've said enough on this, I will stop, okay? I think I've given you my points. I have several pages more. I just want to clarify one thing, because I called the other attorney out on it for giving, we can speak about legal opinions, and he's going to speak on his legal opinion, but in terms of an item that's before our city council, this comes down to whether we should or shouldn't do it. There's nothing illegal about this, okay? So if we want to put this stuff out there, it's not illegal. So if we're going to have Mr. Riley comment, and I am totally in favor of that, I just want to ask that we as a council agree that that we're going to ask him the question of what he thinks about this. Because we have in the past called out Mr. Marino for doing the same thing. He interjected himself. So I have no objection to doing that if that's what you want to bring out, and I will yield then to Mr. Riley. Is that what you wish?
Yes.
Okay, so council, with your permission, then I'm going to defer to Fred Riley, our city attorney, regarding his opinion on this, both legal and also workability. Is everyone in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Mr. Riley.
I'd like to make several comments about the policy. I was asked to review it. I will unfortunately tell you I was at somewhat of a disadvantage in reviewing it because I didn't know what had come before the policy was generated and what direction the council gave, or what was the tenor of what you were trying to accomplish. In reviewing it, there's quite a few things that you can change. My concern in reviewing it was initially, do you want the policy and the agreement to be done in time to be applied to this event that you have at the end of September? So that was my biggest concern. And when I have had discussions over the last week with city manager and the mayor, it became apparent to me the most important thing to get done immediately was the agreement, so that's what I spent my time doing. I think there are some things in the current policy that certainly should be given greater scrutiny, and there should be some direction from the council as far, and I'll pick the point that you stopped with, the point about the, who actually is eligible and whether it can be somebody that's doing business with the city. If the council wants to have, and I'm just picking waste management for purposes of ease of example, if you want companies like that to be eligible, then my task would be to find a legal and ethical way to put it in the policy so that they could do so, and there wouldn't be an ethical, so especially an ethical issue. I mean, if you have the contract, you will have ultimately a legal relationship between two contracting parties. But for purposes of the policy, you need to discuss or give direction as to which way do you want it. when it comes to certain key things that would be in the policy. As far as my opinion of the policy as it sits now, I don't think it's a bad policy. One of my questions to the city manager was, did you have a pre-existing policy and this is to take the place of it? And the answer that I received was there was not a policy that was applicable to the city council for this type of event. So you're initially, or this policy would be your initial version of it. And, you know, I would tell you, based on my experience, over time, no matter what policy you put in place, you're going to modify it over the course of years in order to make it better suited for this community. So as far as going forward with it, my suggestion for purposes of this evening would be that you not take action on putting this in place, because I think it would certainly conflict with the agreement that I had prepared, and I think it should be continued for another day, and there needs to be more work done on the policy in some key areas. So that's my recommendation to you.
Mr. Riley, I agree with everything you said with one exception. Because this is a special council meeting, you're not permitted, as I read Robert's Rules of Order, to table anything. So we need to decide yay or nay on this. We can decide nay, and we can come back in another day and revisit this thing. But that's my understanding, and if you wish to go through that paragraph with me, we can. Because if I'm interpreting it wrong, I'm certainly open to change. But I believe it says that that's not permitted, because this is basically the purpose of this meeting tonight. Okay. Other than that, I agree.
My recommendation then would be that you do not approve this policy, because I can tell you now, if you do go to the next item, which is the agreement, and you approve that ultimately, even if you revise it, I fully expect there will be inconsistencies between the policy and the agreement. So my suggestion, do not approve it tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Council, at this point, we can debate this further, or someone can call the question. This is something I don't think I've ever seen used over here, but you can call the question, which shuts the debate off and brings this to a vote. I believe, and I'm doing this from memory, and I could be wrong, but I think we need a majority to decide it, but we'll see, a majority to decide to call the question, and then we go right to vote. Do we have any motion to call? Okay.
Before, I'd like to just add to this just 1 second. I think it's 2/3.
2/3, okay. I'm going to check it.
The overarching issue here is expediency, because we're against the compressed timeline in September. So the way I see it tonight is you've got 3 options. Either you understand and do a risk-benefit decision. Obviously, maybe this policy is 80% correct and we need to go back and fix it at a later time. Or you started pointing out the deficiencies in the agreement. Maybe we make the corrections now. You've pointed out the deficiencies. You've probably got some fixes in mind for that. So make the suggestions and corrections this evening and declare victory and go home, or we send it back and set a new deadline for completion.
Well, sorry, can I say something? Question. So if we chose 2 or we correct it, or is that giving Mr. Riley adequate time to legally approve or say, yes, that's good enough and we're okay?
We're going to correct it. We're going to be here for a few hours. We're going to go through every line of this, fix it up. Then Mr. Riley's going to have to revise it, bring it back, show it to us. We're going to go through it again. And we'll, it's going to be a while.
Would it be better to, when I read this, it, sounds great to me, but again, medical, not legal. But then when you point out this, I'm like, oh yeah, I see what you mean, because I just don't have that legal mind. So would it be better, since you have all these great suggestions, to get together with Mr. Riley separately and do this, kind of? I don't know the proper procedure. I'm just thinking I'm going to be of no use making corrections, unless it's spelling.
Well, it's not so much corrections, it's what we want as a council and as a city. So if
Exactly.
we want to have, and I'm not sure where this idea that if you do business for 12 months with the city, you can't participate. I don't know, that's 12, not 8, not 6, not 16. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's an Attorney General's opinion. I don't know where it's coming from. It came from, I think, something that the city manager may have had from a prior contract. I don't know who reviewed that or whether it's legal or not. So, I mean, we have to go through all of this and decide it, and then we can actually vote on the amended contract tonight. We have to vote on, I agree with Vice Mayor Gunn, we have to vote on something tonight because we're leaving in 2 days and we're not going to be back for a while and nobody's going to have, there's not going to be any sponsors.
Well, I think the problem is, just to summarize everything, I think, Lynn is not a lawyer, he threw this together, whatever resources he looked up. I mean, I probably would do no better, honestly, maybe worse, most likely worse. And then the expediency is the issue, because we need to get it done. So I'm thinking of the fall festival, and I'm almost saying, let's fix it, let's vote on it, let's get it right now so we can, and trust me, I want to go home too, guys.
Well,
First day of school, want to be home, too late.
I would say we send it back to legal. We're opening ourselves up to a huge liability with a contract that not even we can agree that's legal. And even if we make the corrections tonight, we need legal to look at it again and make sure. I mean, obviously, we hired an attorney to do this stuff for us, to keep our city safe. And I think we need to go that route. And the mayor can't act as a legal
No, I agree.
representative. So we need our legal attorney.
No, I agree, we do. I'm just trying to think of the fastest, best way so we can get this to the, yes.
Mr. Allen?
Correct.
You ready?
Thank you, yeah, no.
That's all right. Mr. Allen?
Well, I just want to make the clarification for the council.
Thank you.
And we hadn't gotten to it yet, but in making revisions to the agreement, I did that with the idea that in all likelihood, you would not be able to modify the policy, and the agreement could stand on its own and would incorporate most of the things that you would need to be concerned about so that you could proceed with using the agreement for the event. The policy, to me, is very helpful because it gives direction for a whole range of events. The way I would look at the agreement when you get to it is we have an event, the event is imminent, and will this agreement serve the purpose of establishing the contractual relationship between the city and the various sponsors? And I think it will, and I don't think you will have substantial problems because of the agreement. There's things that I talked to the mayor about with respect to any event, such as insurance. And insurance, I didn't put stuff in the agreement related to insurance requirements, but the city can get event insurance. The individual sponsors or participants can get event insurance, and that's typically done for any kind of event, because this is not like throwing an event 30 years ago where people really weren't as concerned about those things. Today you have to be concerned about them. But bottom line, I think the agreement would serve the purpose, and I specifically wrote it, especially the last revisions, with the idea that you would in all likelihood not be implementing a policy that would give you a backdrop to the agreement.
So if we approve the agreement, we could go ahead with the sponsors and for the festival, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sorry.
I have a question, Mr. Riley. If we approve this tonight, how long will it take you to compare the two documents and recommend? I don't have a problem coming back for a special council meeting tomorrow, the next day, whatever, to vote on the amended version of this policy. What are we talking about in time? How soon could you look this over and make a revised version of these two documents for us?
Well, the agreement is already revised. I've revised that twice so far. And the policy I've revised once. And again, I'm not using this as an out, I'm just telling you honestly, I was at a disadvantage in revising the policy because at first I didn't even know if it was an existing policy that had been passed. And then once that was clarified, it was my next item is, how do you incorporate the direction that the council wants to follow? And that's the part I just don't know. So I question, what was the origin of the policy?
Let me ask a question of you. Sure. Do you have a marked up copy of what you think the changes should be?
It's a marked up for me, you'll never be able to read it, and it has stuff down there which is just to trigger me to speak about it. You will be here for hours if we want to go through this, and that's all I'm telling you. Just to discuss something as to whether we should or should not permit people that come before this council to participate in this. Okay, because that was one of the prohibitions. I mean, that knocks out your company, my company, Jody's company, Dr. Aki's company, Rita Swope's company. I mean, even if we wanted to do this, we couldn't. And that's crazy. We're not getting anything out of this. It's a gratuitous gift to the city. So, and there's nothing wrong if we buy a table. So, but I don't want it. So bottom line is, I think if I'm hearing Mr. Riley correct, we don't need this policy right now. We can go with the agreement, which I have far less problems with. In fact, I think I only have maybe one or two real problems. I'm not saying we can't firm this thing up, but we're under the gun right now. If we don't get this out, we're in trouble. But I want to correct, Mr. Riley, I have you in 1 second. I want to correct one thing that Councilwoman Swope said. I do not speak for the city when I speak as an attorney. I speak for Joseph Manzo, mayor. I happen to be an attorney, and I know quite a bit about constitutional law and contract law, so I use that knowledge to benefit the city. I do not speak, nor do I represent the city. Ever, never, and never have I done it, and never will I do it. Mr. Riley.
Well, I wanted to answer his question, Mr. Gaddis's question. I will immediately make another revision to the policy, and we'll have it to you within the next several days.
I would like to amend the motion to delay approval of the sponsorship policy until Mr. Riley can review it and ensure that it's aligned with the actual agreement itself. And
I think that's the problem that I was saying before. Normally, we could do that in a council meeting, but because this is a special meeting, I don't think that's akin to tabling it.
I'm not tabling it, that's a separate motion. I am amending the motion to delay.
Was that different from tabling?
Because actually, if you go back to Robert's rules, tabling is based on an exigent requirement. Like somebody needs to catch a plane, so we put it aside to discuss other important business. But the motion, as I'm amending it, is all we're doing is just delaying it until Monday to give Mr. Riley a chance to review and ensure alignment with his agreement. And then we reconvene.
I guess my point is this. You and I leave Wednesday for Florida League of Cities. I leave 2 days later for New Jersey. I can't look at this. So if somebody else wants to carry the ball, fine. I just can't do this. I've put in probably 20, 30 hours already on this festival in the city within this week. I can't do it. We're not going to get this done. And I think at this point, we'll hear from the Parks Board people. I think this is starting to create problems with potential sponsors. So my point, if we don't need it right now, and if we could live without it, let's not rush a policy through, because I think we do need to put some work in on this thing. I mean, Mr. Gaddis jumped in because he was getting tired of listening to what I have to say, but I wasn't done, and I had a lot more stuff. Each one of those items needs to be discussed, debated, and, you can tell me you don't care, and you can tell me you do care, but I mean, it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. We haven't even heard all of your comments. I'm sure you each have comments on the document, so I have no place to go. I'll stay here all night, but we have to, we can defer it if we want, but I don't know that we can defer the sponsorship agreements that goes with this, so.
The sponsorship agreement, I don't see a problem with that. As far as the policy goes, I think this is something that can wait. And so even before the vote, just let you know, I will not be voting for this.
So what's the proper procedure to?
I was saying before, we can call the question, we can keep debating, we can turn it open to the floor, you have to call the question, I can't do that. That would start it to an immediate vote. But the question would be to approve or not approve this. Although there's a second motion on the floor, so I don't want to ignore that either. So the Vice Mayor has made a motion to amend this, to basically delay it till maybe next week or whenever Mr. Riley's ready. So we have a second for that. Let's take care of that.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have 2 seconds. So that's now open for discussion.
My feeling on that is that we are both going to be out of pocket because of the Florida League of Cities. I can step up and we can convene a forum next week. to push the new policy. Would that meet your timeline or availability?
What was the time that you had in mind?
Monday, next Monday?
That's fine.
So I guess I'm confused, isn't the question the same thing as the delay? Just different wording. The idea is we're not making it happen today, we're gonna be making it happen later on.
Calling the question is to vote on this as it's written there. And
And if we vote no, then it's delaying it.
Well, I have amended the motion to say,
Okay.
I just don't see how the delay benefits us when I, who had so many comments that everybody was getting tired of it, but every one of those is a valid comment and they have to be addressed. Or I'm not going to vote yes for this policy until I have an answer on it. I'll abide by what the council says. If you say, hey, we're not interested in such and such a thing, that's fine. But we need to discuss this. And if you want, again, I think we need to discuss this sometime. So if we want to kick the can down the road, I'm okay with that. We can kick it till Monday, we can kick it till next Tuesday. Problem is, we need to meet on this then, we need to discuss all of this. These are my notes are not for publication, so there's kind of questions, and a lot of those were questions that I asked which need answers. And the city manager has to participate, so we need a work session on this.
Leon?
Yes.
It's not typical that council has involvement with writing city policy. If I have a suggestion, I would go to Lynn and have him address my suggestion in the policy, and he and I would meet individually on that. Or I might talk to our city attorney about those things, but to sit in a public forum and pick apart a city policy is not typically how it's done. I'm not, with all due respect, I appreciate your time you've put into this, but why can't you take those same steps I would take and talk to Lynn and talk to the city attorney and make your suggestions, just as I might if I see something that the city's doing or that's in a current policy. Lynn and I have had a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with the employee handbook and suggestions with that, and that was never brought in front of the council. I don't know why we have to air all this in front of
The answer to that is found in item number 3, that this has been going for a month and a half, and probably a month and a half before that. So this is something that has been brought up, tried to be brought up, hasn't been addressed. So that's why I have to call this meeting so that we can get some type of action on this. Again, if you want the city manager to write the policy, that's fine. Again, council can make the decision. I'll put my vote in, and then it goes wherever it goes. But if we write something that is not good for the city, or that may not be proper for the city, so be it. Then we'll pay the price for that. This price would be about loss of 50% of the sponsorship, several $1,000s. So if that's what council's pleasure is, I'm okay with that. But that money comes out of our treasury, so.
Well, again, I guess my point is that, if we go line by line, and, I value your input and your expertise, I'm just of no use, so, with this legal stuff, so I would defer to you guys. So like she said, and kind of what I was saying, would it be better served time-wise if you and Lynn, or you and Fred met and did it? I know you said you don't have time.
I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible. That's not going to happen until September with my schedule. Okay, given the fact that I'm out of the state. I have litigation against multinational companies. I have a murder trial coming up. I have a little bit of work ahead of me, so I just can't do it.
Okay,
That's
fair
it.
enough.
I've done it, I've tried, and that's why I brought it to your attention. So I'll do it in September, but that doesn't help us much for this fall festival, because I think we need sponsorship.
Would we be able to delay the policy revision till September, but still go ahead with the agreement and still be in time for the festival?
I think that's what Fred was saying, is basically delay it, and then not delay it forever. We should have a policy, I agree, but maybe when we can all meet and really dig into it and go through the detail here.
So let me just make sure I've got this clear. We do not need this policy to move forward with the agreement. Is that correct?
Mr. Ryan?
That's my position. You do not need it. You need an agreement, and I think the agreement that you'll discuss shortly covers what major bases you need to cover for purposes of putting on your event at the end of September.
Did any of the sponsors require this agreement, the policy, or only the agreement?
My understanding is only the agreement. I'm getting a nod from June Van Scoy in the back, who is the chairman of the Parks Board, who's got most of these sponsors, so none of them are looking for the policy. I think the policy is a guide for us, and I think I don't mind deferring to the city manager's judgment. If there's something that comes up controversial, if he's ready to blow out one of our major sponsors, I think he brings that to council before he makes that decision. And Mr. Riley and myself have used the example of an inappropriate business. If some inappropriate business comes here, which we all can guess what they are, I don't think there's going to be much disagreement that we're going to try and discourage that to the extent we legally can. But the police force isn't an inappropriate business, nor is waste management, nor is some of the others.
I guess my last question, sorry, is would it be helpful for you or Lynn, whoever decides to revise it, if you with your notes went through them and at least talked about briefly your concerns, or would that just be?
I'll be happy to do it, but it's not going to happen until after I get back
No, I
from
meant
my September trip.
I meant finish what you were
Yes.
doing already, because like you point out things and I'm like, oh yeah, I see that now, so would that help you, or is that no, or you already know them?
To you, I'm asking a lot of questions, I'm not necessarily giving answers, but I don't remember where I
Or maybe
started.
just point to the problems you
Mayor,
see.
could I
Sure.
speak?
I'm just asking, I don't know.
What this policy is, and I spoke to Mr. Riley about it, and I offered that to the mayor, and it was given to the park board originally on the park chair, July 10th. She made some comments on it, and in an email to me stated that the mayor was going to make comments on it, and till tonight, I haven't gotten any comments from the mayor, but that's immaterial. I did voice to the mayor that this could be done as an administrative policy, because we have administrative policies like things like, actually Fred signed one of them about email or workplace drugs, that I write those policies and they're not. So, if there's issues, and that's what I'm hearing from the mayor, I guess my question to some of these, maybe I need to change a word, because I think the last interpretation about the 12 months, what that means is if Waste Management if it was a company coming to bid on a service, then they could not be a sponsor, because that would give you the impression that they're paying you to select them. I'm not talking about somebody that we already do business with. I'm talking about people that it would be no different. The mayor and vice mayor are going to the League of Cities, okay? Waste Management does a dinner. The people that went last year, they did a dinner, but they weren't invited. And they weren't invited because there was a bid out on the street. So, maybe the interpretation is not as clear, but, that's just an example.
And I think the way you just stated that, I would have zero problem with that, okay? Because the other way it eliminated everybody who's
No,
doing
it doesn't
business.
eliminate.
But if you're saying you can't have someone who's bidding, then that's acceptable, because that does give the perception they might be trying to buy.
Yeah,
victory.
what I was trying to say is an entity or an individual with business coming before the city council. Well, that to me says that somebody's bidding on something and they're trying to say, oh, I'll give you $1,000. Maybe that'll make them select me. And that's what should be prevented, because that's really trying to sell you their services by buying a vote, I guess, to some degree. So, it can be done either way. I think Mr. Ryan and I have talked about the agreement. The agreement's, as far as I'm concerned, was fine. There were some edits to it, but for the most part, his and my discussion, we can use it as it is. And this could be an administrative policy. And I asked the mayor that, he told me no. So that's why we're here talking about it.
Because this is the same stuff that was out there. Oh, I think I saw this thing back in early July.
July
I
11th.
rejected it then, and I'm rejecting it now, so it's the same stuff. So anyway, with that said, I think we can fix this. We can't fix it for tomorrow. I am not going to even look at this until after September 7th or 9th when I get back, and that's that, and that's my schedule. So the city has put a major time constraint on my ability to do anything more, for it, and I just can't do any more at this point in time. So I'm going to have to call a timeout with my time that I do. I'll be happy to tear through this and go through it with Mr. Riley and Mr. Reeves, but not until September. If it's waited this long, we've been talking about this since April or May, so it will wait another month, and we're just going to have the festival and have it without it. I think if there's a question of judgment, bring it to the council, or for the most part, we all know the companies and places that we don't want to have doing business here, so we're not going to even say it.
Well,
Okay.
I would rather wait till the thing is correct. Otherwise, I'm not going to vote on it because there's nothing worse than having a contract that has to be edited or changed or ask people to cross off stuff to enter things and initial it all. So if it takes a little bit extra time, then I think the city, and looking out for our own interest as a city, we need to do that.
So we have Vice Mayor Gunn's motion, I keep these all straight, to delay. We have to vote on that first.
Well, I guess that's my confusion, is it delay the same thing as questioning the vote, will ultimately be resolved if it's voted no?
Well, we can turn it down, I mean, you can.
Well, would turning it down also mean go back to the table, fix it?
Same
That's the same thing?
Pretty
No
much.
and delay means you're not getting it tonight.
Well, that's fine, that's why I'm confused.
Other than a
Isn't it
yes,
the
you're not
same
getting it
thing?
tonight.
Okay, well then which
But
one
we
do we
can-
need to do?
Vice Mayor Gunn has a motion here. Someone want to call the question, or would you like me to open it up to the floor? Because now I have to do citizen comments, so.
Well, we already seconded the motion.
Right, but we have to call the question to stop the debate, because right now we've spoken on council. I think we're finished on council, so now I have to go
Well,
to the
I
floor.
call the question to stop this policy and set it for another day. I don't know if
Calling the
we're-
question for a vote is what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
We need a 2/3 majority, Madam Clerk. Which means 5 people. Mark Beam is voting? Marv, are you there?
For clarification, are we voting for the delay or are we voting?
Yes, you're voting for the delay.
So if I vote no,
So-
I'm delaying?
Make
or
sure I
yes?
get this right. If I say yay, I'm voting for delay.
Actually, if you say yay, you're amending the question to add delay as an option, and then we're going to vote on the question.
So
You guys
we're-
are killing me tonight.
I don't get it.
That's true.
You know I don't understand.
It's okay, but that's all right. So
I don't even know where we are.
your motion was to amend it to add delay to it, okay? Because I have accept,
Until
reject, or
Monday.
revise. Right. Well, it's not going to be Monday, so I already said that, so just delay.
So can I just withdraw the motion?
You can do that too.
Withdraw the motion to delay?
Okay. All right, so now we're back to the original question. We call in the question again for a vote?
Calling the question for a vote.
Second?
Second.
2/3 majority to require to get us to vote, then we vote.
So,
Marv? Councilmember Bean?
so I
He's
go-
not there, Mayor.
The question voted to, I'm sorry, this is a,
If you vote yes, move the question. We go straight to the vote.
We're going to vote. We're just stopping from going out. More debate on this. I think we've debated.
We're just stopping debate.
okay.
Leave me a message and I'll call you back.
Is anybody else confused?
Just tell me, oh,
Well, he's probably picking up the phone.
Hello?
Councilmember Bean, Mayor Manzo, could you repeat where we are for
Council, I'm
Councilmember Bean?
going to repeat all of it. Councilmember Bean, can you hear me?
I can now, thank you.
Okay, so there's been a motion on the floor at this point on question number 1 to call the question. It's one that we haven't used very often, but what that's going to do is stop the debate on this question before I send it out to the floor and have more council debate. We've been going for 45 minutes. I think we probably have a consensus here, but before we can vote on it, we need to call the question. So we need a 2/3 majority at this point, and so if you vote yes on this, it just means that you're bringing it to a vote without further discussion. And if you vote no, then there'll be further discussion. I intend to send it to the floor. Then back to council. Okay?
All right.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Aki?
Yes.
Councilmember Beam?
Yes.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Yes.
Councilmember Shirley,
Yes.
Councilmember Swope,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Yes,
Mayor Manzo.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. The question is now called. Now, the vote is, so I said this 3 different ways, so we're going to, I guess the easiest way to do this is, and Vice Mayor Gunn, make sure this encompasses what your thoughts are. We're going to vote to accept this policy. If we accept the policy, it goes down the way it is. If we reject it, it goes back to the drawing board. That sound right for everyone? So a yes vote means you like it just the way it is. And a no vote means it goes back, we'll fix it as soon as we can. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Aki,
No.
Councilmember Beam, Councilmember Beam,
we're not gonna need
Why not?
Could you repeat that, Patty? I lost it.
Councilmember Beam, what we're doing is we're voting on the question now. A yes vote means that we accept the sponsorship policy exactly the way it's written. If you heard the debate, you know there's a lot of questions and comments on it. And the city attorney has said we don't have to do that. So a yes vote means you accept it just the way it is. A no vote means it is rejected. It goes back to the drawing board. As soon as we can get to it, we're going to get to it. I have already said I can't personally participate in this until sometime after September 7th or 8th when I get back. So that's what we're looking at. So a no vote means it goes to the drawing board. A yes vote means you accept it. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Beam,
Yes.
Councilmember Gaddis,
No.
Councilmember Shirley,
No.
Councilmember Swope,
No.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
no.
Mayor Manzo.
No. It passes 6-1. The motion to pass this policy is defeated, so it goes back to the drawing board for us to work on, and hopefully the 3 of us will work on it together with input from anyone else in council. I will say this, do we need to do this in a work session, or does council want to just have myself and the city attorney and the city manager try and work this out and bring you something cleaned up?
I have a suggestion. I would like for everyone to take a look at this, write up their own comments, and send it to the city manager to discuss with you guys. And that way, we can all input our comments, and of course, you'll have yours, but I think most of ours will just be minor. You pointed out a lot of the flaws already, and
Mr. Riley, that's a good suggestion. Are we going to run afoul of the sunshine rules by doing that? Because I'm going to see all of that, and now I'm going to have the input of all my fellow council members.
Well, let me make a different suggestion. At this point, the policies failed, so you are starting over again. I've revised it once. I have the tenor of the debate. There's some key things in there that I think, based on what I've heard, certainly need to be changed. There's a lot of, for want of a better phrase, minutia. There's a lot of things that are not necessarily good, bad, or indifferent, but they are things that ultimately you may want to debate. My suggestion, and this goes to a lot of things, it's easier for you to debate something and critically assess it when you have something in front of you. So my suggestion is, let me take another whack at it and make some revisions and get that to you. And I'm sensitive to the concern you have about emailing comments. If you share the comments in a group email, then that would violate the sunshine law. If you're sending comments that you only send to myself and the city manager, that would not violate the sunshine law, so that would be fine. If I can get this done before the end of the week, which I certainly expect I can, then maybe the thing to do would be for the council members to thereafter provide their individual comments based on a new version of this document over, some period of time. And then as soon as you're able to sit down and take that revised version and debate it with the idea that you're going to finalize it, that I think you'd be in good position to do that.
Again, I cannot get you anything between now and the end of the week. What I can do, and I don't think you'll be able to read this, but I'll give it to you. Maybe you've got, good deciphering capabilities. You can have a copy of what I've written.
Well, you and I
maybe can do it on telephone. So.
You and I've had the benefit of discussing this somewhat before, and for purposes of the folks here tonight, in trying to do this over the course of the last week, I had to talk to somebody, and the two people that were the logical choices to talk to were the city manager and the mayor, and that's what I did. In the future, there will be times that I would include all the city council members, because I can communicate with the client, and that's the way it will be done in the future. This was done this one time because it needed to be expedited.
So is everyone going to get your comments by email? Do not copy each other. And what is our target for that?
He said after he came up with the revision. So we'll get the revision, look at that, and then if we have any comments, then email you, or then, that's right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good. Then we're on to item 2. We're finished with item 1, which is the approval of the Bel Air Beach sponsorship agreement. And this is to review, edit, reject, or approve the City of Bel Air Beach sponsorship agreement prepared by the city manager, submitted to the legal counsel on August 1st, with comments received on August 7th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we're open for discussion.
Well, I disagree with several of the things in this sponsorship agreement, so until it's changed and brought up to date a little bit as well, then I'm not going to be able to even vote for it in all good conscience, especially since we couldn't vote for the policy, but that's where I stand on it.
You want to elaborate on what you
Well,
issues with?
yes, under the controlling law, you've got in here where I'm not going to read the whole thing, but state of Florida and all duly adopted ordinances, regulations, and policies of the city now in effect, and those hereinafter adopted. We have a parking issue on the streets. We won't allow residents to park, but if we're opening this up to a citywide event, there's going to be people parking in our streets, and that's one of our ordinances. As well as the no waiver. It says this agreement does not in any way constitute a waiver of the city's regulatory authority or the application of the city code or any other applicable law, rule, or regulation. Once again, parking is there. So that would be affected by that. So I can't go for that.
I think you bring up an interesting point, because we hold a citywide garage sale that absolutely clogs our streets to capacity. There's parking on both sides. It's impossible for emergency vehicles. So if we do want to consider the ramifications of a small event like this that's going to affect probably about 6 or 7 streets, we should consider something that affects 40 streets when we do that. So I think that if we're going to do it, let's look at everything then, and let's come up with a parking policy, which I believe is one of the ordinances that's up for revision right now anyway. Definitely one that's up for revision. Other comments? I do have some. This references, I'm just going to make the major ones here. This references a brochure. That brochure is not ready. It's as far as I know, it's not even in production. There's stuff that talks about consistent with the mission and values of the city. I think that's vague, arbitrary, and capricious. I don't think it says anything, and it's just open for anyone's interpretation. I think under family-friendly community, Fred and I discussed this at length. I liked his choice of language for that, but I do think that we may have an issue saying that sponsorships on city property are maintained as a non-public forum. I believe, my understanding of constitutional law says that the city hall property is a non-public forum, but the parks are not, and we do have an issue with that with our ordinances right now. Our parks are absolutely a public forum, and even though we say they're not, I think that, again, my interpretation of it says that they are, and I think we're leading ourselves into some trouble on here. We talk about sole discretion throughout this contract. It's in several different spots. I don't know whose discretion that is, and it doesn't, again, really comport with any written policies that we have, because I don't know what our city policy is on, our mores, our customs. It's just not listed here. There's talk in here about that we can use the logo of these sponsoring activities. I just can't see anybody letting us do that. It has a major logo. I mean, one of the people we were talking to was Budweiser. They're not going to let you use their logo. It's just not going to happen, okay? So I think it's something that we can ask them if they would permit us to do it, but to just take that, I do agree with what Councilwoman Swope said before. The last thing we want to do is make each one of these contracts something that's going to have to be negotiated for, done by the attorney, initialed, marked up. These things just need to fly as it is. We can put an addendum as to what the proper use of someone's logo or advertising is. And the other thing I think it was talking about, it may be the other one, I'm not sure, but I think it was talking about us looking at people's advertising or clearing people's advertising. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think anyone's going to let you go in and give permission. It actually says here in the permissible recognition messages, it says that we want to control their use. This would be a sponsor's use of the city's name. You can't do that. Marks or logo, that you can do. So we can stop them from using the logo that's behind me, I believe, because that's a copyright or trademark. We can't stop them from using Bel Air Beach. If they want to go on their site, they have as much free speech right as anyone else to say that they're supporting the city of Bel Air Beach. So we can't control all these messages. We don't have the people. We have delays in getting these contracts out. I just don't think we have the capacity to start telling Waste Management what to do on their website. That's the crux of my comments. I think this is workable. Other comments?
Motion to call a vote.
We have a second? We have a second?
Second.
I hear a second.
Second.
I guess to vote.
That's just to stop the discussion and go to vote on this contract. Now, will that be, I have to ask the question, I just gave a bunch of issues, what are we voting on? Are we voting to correct those issues or address those issues, or we're not going to address them?
According to the attorney, he doesn't see any showstoppers or anything that's really going to put us into harm's way at this time. And obviously, we are in a hurry to offer a contract. I would say that my recommendation would be to vote this through so that we can put some contracts in hand. And also, at the same time, we have our attorney go through and make any more recommendations that he has, and we can revise this contract at the next meeting if there are people still wanting to sign a contract.
So vote for it as is and then make amendments or changes if Mr. Ryder feels legally necessary. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is
Future
if
contract
anyone needs
needs-
to sign a contract now, we can do that.
Great.
And then, as the attorney has time and goes through it all and makes the minor corrections that he identifies and the mayor has identified, we can do an amended version of that contract for anyone else going forward.
Mr. Riley, what you just heard from me, comments that you just heard from me, are you still in the position that the contract, the sponsorship agreement as you wrote it is acceptable for now?
Yes.
Okay.
The thing I would say is, with any contract, I could have done it a different way, and the thing would be 30 pages long instead of 4 pages long. The things that I modified were to make it as streamlined and direct as possible, so that you would have a basic document that would give you a way to go forward and not have any further delay with your event. The points that you raise, I certainly think there's validity in some of the points that you raise, and in any contract you write, you're not going to be able, unless it's the thickness of a phone book, to address every conceivable situation that may arise, but for purposes of this event and this event going forward, I think this is as good a document as you can use at this given time.
Okay. Got a motion to call the question. We need a 2/3 vote to call the question, and then we'll actually vote on the question. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Aki,
Yes.
Councilmember Beam,
Yes.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Yes.
Councilmember Shirley,
Yes.
Councilmember Swope,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Yes.
Mayor Manzo.
Yes, the motion passes 7-0. We now go to the vote. Yes, please call. So I have to restate it, okay? So this is the approval of the Bel Air Beach sponsorship agreement as written. There will be no edits to this. We've discussed that there could be changes down the road. That's something that is not part of this motion. So you're approving it as is. If you say no, it will not be approved and it will go back to the drawing board. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Aki,
Yes.
Councilmember Beam,
Yes.
Councilmember Gaddis,
Yes.
Councilmember Shirley,
Yes.
Councilmember Swope,
No.
Vice Mayor Gunn,
Yes.
Mayor Manzo.
Yes, the motion passes 6-1. The sponsorship agreement is now in effect. And Mr. Riley, is there anything you need to do to make it formal so that it can actually be subject for signature tomorrow? Your mic is off.
Nothing further.
Your mic is off.
No, there's nothing further.
Okay, so then a clean copy of this will suffice for the Parks Board to start signing up sponsors?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what we will do then. I'm going to ask this council for a point of privilege. I would like about a 15-minute recess at this point before I call question number 3. I would like to speak with the city manager privately and in his office. And so I'm going to ask for 15 minutes. We may need a little longer. When we come back, we will resume, if that's okay with this council.
I'd like to object. A lot of people are here that would like to speak about this, so if we can move it on, it's on the agenda.
Aye. Okay. We'll take a vote on it. All in favor of a 15-minute recess? Aye?
Aye.
1, 2 ayes. Against? Everybody else, right? So it's 5-2. No recess. Next question. Reprimand of city manager for failure to timely carry out the city council's item 10 directive of July 1st that required him to create sponsorship agreements and releases to be used in the fall festival, trunk or treat event, Christmas festival for children, and city car show. The explanation of this, the city manager, by his failure to promptly act upon the July 1st, 2019 item 10 directive of the city council has caused unnecessary delay upon the festival, has caused unnecessary work, delay, and stress upon the Parks Board, this city council, and the city, has caused the city embarrassment before potential sponsors and organizations, and has negatively delayed and affected the Parks Board's ability to obtain sponsors for the fall festival. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? There being no second, the motion dies. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Now we need to ask the citizens' comments in this point on any of this.
There is no citizen comments. This is a special meeting.